leads you through lots of different twists and turns, and right when you think you have a sense of where it's going to go, it flips on you.
Hey everyone, I'm Lindsay Miller, and I'm here today with Matt Davis, who's playing Jeff on the CW's new show, Cult.
Right.
The concept of this show is a little bit complicated. A little bit. How are you describing it to people?
Not very well. No, it is. It's a sort of a show within a show, and it basically starts out with my character, whose brother goes missing.
Listen, he called me around 11 o'clock. It was a bad connection. He was really freaked out. And then the call ended, and it was cut off.
So you think the call was cut off?
It could have been. I really don't know. But there's no sign of forced entry or any aggressive contact. The blood is contained. There's no splatters. So I'm a reporter, okay? My first job out of college was covering homicide in Boston.
And he discovers that his missing brother has been abducted by this cult that is being influenced by this television show.
About a cult.
Yeah. Within our show, which is named Cult.
Right. So when you first read the script, were you like, how are they going to pull this off? Or were you excited about the prospect?
Yeah, I mean, I loved the script. When I first read it, I thought it was really fantastic. I thought it was really clever and outside the box. It was a new perspective on an interesting idea. And we shot the pilot in 8 days, and I was really happy the way it turned out. And the season is just like this sort of exploration of the setup of that pilot.
Well, it's pretty interesting too because the show is very intense and pretty violent for a network show. So it seems like it's kind of pushing the envelope a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's definitely a little more mature for the CW. It's a psychological thriller. The violence is therefore the violence is real. It's not like supernatural violence. Which I think makes it more tangible. It deals with the effects of television, and how it affects viewers. And
so in the pilot episode, which is online now, people can watch it. Your brother goes missing, and you're sort of trying to unravel this mystery. How much are we going to find out as the season goes on, and how much will kind of remain unknown?
Well, quite a bit. I mean, you start out with the premise as it is sort of proposed in the pilot. And it leads you through lots of different twists and turns, and right when you think you have a sense of where it's going to go, it flips on you.
Yeah.
And so it poses a lot of questions in the beginning, wraps them up in the end, and then proposes an even bigger question for the next season.
Okay. So how much do you know about every episode, like going into shooting?
I didn't know anything.
Really?
I mean, we were kind of on a need-to-know basis, and so I had read the pilot, and then every other episode, you're just waiting to find out what's going on. So I had no idea what the arc would be. So we are literally sort of discovering what's happening with the characters as actors.
People loved you on The Vampire Diaries, as you know, and people are obsessed with that show. So I tweeted that you were going to be coming by today, and people had all kinds of interesting questions. Very interesting questions. My favorite was somebody wanted to know if you thought that your character on Cult would be friends with your character from The Vampire Diaries. Would they get along?
Yes.
Something
tells me that they would.
What do they have in common?
Well, they're both searching for missing loved ones.
There you go.
So I think they'd have that in common. They're both sort of like working their way through a world that no one would normally think is true. They'd have that in common.
Wow, you're right. I hadn't thought of that.
I think Jeff is probably a fan of Vampire Diaries because he has a crush on Nina Dobrev. So I think they might have that in common.
There you go. Well, speaking of Nina, she and Kat have kind of hinted that somebody from the show who was killed off is going to be coming back soon.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that it's you?
No.
There isn't any chance we can let our hopes die at this point?
Let them die.
Would you, if they invited you back at some point, though, would you go with
absolutely.
it? I mean, anything can happen on that show. It doesn't matter if you're dead.
Anything can happen. I've had dinner with Julie Pluck a couple times now in the last month or so, and we always have a great conversation over dinner. And the last few times that I've seen her, neither of us have brought up the prospect of Alaric coming back in any capacity, which doesn't mean that he won't, but it just means that I don't know.
Do you do any stunts coming up? Because your character, even in the first episode, gets into some pretty sticky situations.
Do cartwheels count as stunts?
They do not.
Then no. But my character does lots of cartwheels.
That's interesting.
It is.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays into the storyline. One thing I wanted to ask you about on a personal note is that I was following your Twitter feed, and you're a proud parent to 2 rhinos.
Oh, thank God, that's what you were going to say. Yes, that's true. I've adopted a couple of rhinos.
Okay.
Because I've recently come to understand that there is a horrible problem happening with poaching of rhinos and elephants and lots of other animals.
Yeah.
So it sort of struck a chord in me. I don't know why. I've never been one to be much of an animal activist, but there was something about this particular story that grabbed me, and so I've been on Twitter, to some degree, sort of trying to get some awareness out there about the problem, and in the process, I adopted a couple of rhinos.
Have you met them in person yet?
No, not yet, but someday I'm sure we will.
Okay, so the premiere